Well, hello. My name is Karen Nemeth, and I'm here with Leanne Christenson. Hello, Leanne.
Hi, Karen. How are you doing
And
today?
well, we're doing very well, comfortably in our own offices, recording a wonderful topic for our colleagues at NABE. And we have a colleague who worked with us on the presentation named Chela Bruno, and she is works for an early Head Start program she works directly with families here in Pennsylvania. And so we work together to bring this remote presentation to the NABE conference about how language power begins in partnerships with families. So let's get started. Okay. I, Karen Nemeth, am an author and I host the website languagecastle.com. Chela, whose full name is Luz Chela Bruno, is an early start dual language support specialist. So she works with um, families who have infants and toddlers, specifically who speak a variety of languages in the area of Pennsylvania, sort of in the eastern part of Pennsylvania. And Leanne, tell us what you do.
Yeah, I am a professor at Towson University in the Department of Early Childhood Education. And at the beginning of my career, I was a kindergarten teacher in California public schools, and I got my endorsement to be an ESOL teacher. And so I do have experience in the field, even though it's been a little while. My research interests are around early literacy, but integrating science, technology, and math and computational thinking. But also the layer is because those things serve multilanguage learners very well. That's a part of my research agenda as well.
Yes, and those topics really uh, lend themselves to the whole variety of things that are happening at home with families that support
Absolutely.
learning. And,
Absolutely.
so we always think about math learning as, a textbook thing, but really it is often one of the entry points that families have as they are cooking together or measuring together or
Exactly.
sorting the laundry together that builds such powerful learning. And so it's really great to put the sort of research component, the college professor component, and the family component together with your experience with kindergartners. And I have worked with many preschools and Head Start programs throughout the country, and so all of us, including Luz or Chela, who that she likes to be called, has brought contributed examples from her program, but she couldn't sign on with us to do the recording today. So we're going to talk about some of the important principles of partnering with families and really fill the time with examples that you can use in your programs. So here are some of the books that Leanne and I have written together. And the funny thing is that our books are filled with examples that we've learned from working with people like Chela. So we really want to sort of incorporate all those things together. Okay. And our focus is on those partnerships, and not about what schools tell families, but how we all work together, the school, the families, and the community, because that is really central to the theme of the NABE conference this year. And so, in our work with families of young children, we are really enthusiastic about the power that these partnerships can have to get children off to the best possible start, right? We're going to talk about these three components that organized the theory and examples that we're talking about today. We're going to be talking about the important ways that families and community members contribute to classroom learning. They know things, they have things, they've done things. And the more educators can gain from the families and from the local community, the richer and more relevant early childhood education can be for all the children. So we want to bring things in from the families and the community. But at the same time, the teachers in the school have things to send home to the families to help children learn. And so it's a two-way flow of information and support. And that's why that word partnership is so important, right? We're talking about not uh, one person informing the other, but two sides with two components that can help each other working as partners. And then the third piece is so important. Research has shown this for years that when we get families off to a great start, really feeling empowered and engaged in supporting their child's education, what happens to those children? They have those lifelong benefits and are stronger in their success in school because the early childhood educators did the work to help those families really feel welcome and connected and empowered to support their children. And then somewhere down the road, when those children grow up, we take the credit for how great they turned out because we helped
We
those
should take the
families get
credit.
started, right?
Right.
So, okay. So, we know that multilingual families bring cultural and linguistic funds of knowledge to the child's school. They help the child make connections between the home and school, and we want to learn how to engage that support for the so that the families can help their child's learning. So, Leanne, what do you think about that?
We absolutely, and to do that, we need to get to know the families and their backgrounds and where they're from. And we're talking about multilingual families, but this would apply to children. We have a pretty mobile society in the US, and this could apply to children, moving from one geographical region to another. So really getting to find out about families. And one way to do that, and we're going to be giving some concrete examples of this later in the presentation, is finding those linguistic enclaves. And what that means is usually when people move from one place to another, they move somewhere where they feel comfortable and familiar. So that could be something where your culture feels the same, people speak the same language you do. Um, I know I have traveled and gotten to stay in certain places for a while, and I usually stay near some English speaking people because I can communicate, I feel comfortable, I can learn. And so a lot of people settle in the same place. My family immigrated from Sweden and Denmark and Nebraska. There were linguistic enclaves there. They're no longer in existence because everybody speaks English now, and it was over 100 years ago. But that's where those people settled. I have one example here of an El Salvadorian linguistic enclave. And then on the right is Little Italy in Baltimore. It's kind of a hybrid. It's still alive. There's some Italian restaurants. There's a church that is very embedded in Italian culture. I'm thinking some of the residents still speak Italian, but it probably was established over 100 years ago. So be thinking as we go through this presentation, what are the dominant language groups, but also countries? But then we're going to talk more about this. Within those countries, perhaps are people more from? Are they from a big city, an urban area? So be thinking about that because that would be a research resource for you. Houses of worship, churches, synagogues, temples. Those are all places that people would love to reach out to you and help you learn about culture. So that's the first thing we need to do. And that's hard because there are so many cultures. How do we do that? And as early childhood educators, we're pretty busy, but linguistic enclaves can help us with that.
Yeah,
The next,
I,
yeah,
I, you're bringing up several examples that I wanted to just chime in of
yes,
the ways that programs have used that. So one program that I worked with in Philadelphia was in the Chinatown section of Philadelphia,
yes,
and
uh-huh.
so one of the things that the program staff learned was that they hired cooks from the neighborhood because not only were they cooking the same food, not just that the children were used to, but that the families were used to, but that the kitchen smelled familiar. Like you walked into the school and you felt like it was part of the community, not separate from the community. And so there were all, these layers of ways that that went from the minute a family came in to ask about enrolling. They had that feeling of connection, like they belonged here, and they had, to really share with each other. And then another one that I want to share is that I worked with a Head Start in northern New Jersey, had a large um, population of families from Mexico,
Hmm.
but they got the idea to reach beyond the neighborhood, and they contacted the Mexican embassy,
How
who
cool.
was also happy to email back and forth and send them children's books and games and things from Mexico, authentic, from the family's home cultures that they were able to contribute. So community is the family, it's the neighborhood, and it can go beyond that. So these are
Well,
great.
in this day of the internet, I am thinking I have connected with some embassies. I've worked with the Danish embassy, and they are very happy to share resources. That's a really good idea, Karen. I like that. Yeah, yeah. So, we're going to lay a little bit more groundwork, just about language. So we'll go to the next slide. So families bring strengths. A lot of times when I'm out in schools, I hear families and children being talked about in a deficit way. They can't do this, they can't do that.
Yeah.
But all families bring strengths. All cultures have strengths. So I want you to ponder, and you might do this after you listen to the recording, but
Oh,
where did you,
they can press pause
they
and
could,
think
you're
about it and
right.
make some notes and then press
Yeah.
play again. It's
I think it helps if we think about ourselves. It's like, how did where you grow up foster your strengths? We all have strengths, right? What are you really good at? What are you really smart about? What do you do well, right? Well, how did where you grow up foster that? I have an example. I was in a with the Winter Olympics coming up, I was in a preschool in Norway up on this mountain. You know, most people wouldn't even climb up there because it was just, and it was winter, snow, ice. The 2-year-olds had their own skis and they went skiing every day in the winter. And their skis were just these tiny little things. My point with that is the weather, the snow, the mountain. No wonder Norwegian people win lots of Olympic medals in skiing because it's there. From the age of 2, maybe even 18 months, they're on skis. So that's an example of how that region develops strengths
yeah.
in the population. Then moving to more on a more micro level, how did your family foster your
Mm.
strengths? You're a wonderful, beautiful person. How did your family, how did your parents, your grandparents, aunts, uncles, siblings, how did they foster your strengths? And then how did your culture foster your strengths? A lot of my students, they'll say, well, I don't have a culture. And I'm like, yes, you do. And when they drill down, they'll go, oh, my great great grandparents were from Germany. I didn't know them at all, but guess what? We still eat Wiener Schnitzel at New Year's, right? And that sounds like kind of a surface level example, but think of the other values and traditions and things that come with that. So, how did that foster your strengths? And then the next thing I want you to ponder, think of the different children you work from different cultures, different places. Um, what are their strengths? And then how did the region they grew up in, how did their family? There's where I live right now, there's a lot of grandma grandpas that watch the children. They've moved from their country of origin and they live with their families and it's their job to take care of the grandchildren. So how is that a strength, right? Maybe somebody gets to go to a very special daycare at their church or childcare at their church. How did that really, highlight your strengths? And then culture is it's all kinds of layers, right? It's your country, it's your county, it's your region, it's the food you eat, it's how you dress, it's all of that. So really think about your families and your students from a strength based. And I have a picture, I think that's our next slide. Um, yeah, these are some cute little kids. They are in school in Nepal, and every day they walk to school. And the little girl in front's 5, and that's her little 3.5-year-old brother. And I'm not advocating that in the US we have our kids walk because in our context to school, in our context, that wouldn't make sense. But think of the strengths she brings. So she might not be able to do X, right? Well, our kindergartners need to do fill in the blank, right? And but what can this little girl do? Think of the self-efficacy she has. Think of the critical thinking skills she has to figure out every day how we get to school. We've got to avoid certain things. If there's a rainstorm, how do I navigate that? How do I make sure my brother is safe? So it's kind of an extreme example, but really think about what can your kids do? And that goes back, that taps back to we have the responsibility to find out about our families and what their strengths are. And we'll
I,
go ahead to the next slide.
well, no, I'm jumping in here.
Oh, you were jumping in, Karen. Go for it.
But I do love this picture because it does to me evoke those many layers, right? That
Hmm.
the sister has to be prepared how to manage her brother's behavior
Yes.
and
Yeah.
how to navigate the way to school and what to do if something unexpected. It's not going to be the same every day, and she has to be able to solve a problem or adjust their strategy or
Yep.
whatever. So much is going on there, but this is a great example of why if I look up the family culture online, I will not learn about this child's strength experience. I learn about
Exactly.
that through the relationship and the conversations I have with families. So that is what made me think of this. That there is a program that was started, I think at Carnegie Mellon University in Pennsylvania, and it's called Message from Me. So you can actually look it up online. And they developed a way to create an email system that preschool children can use, and and it helps the child communicate back and forth with their family while they're at school. So if they do,
Oh, wow.
a sculpture with clay, they can bring it over to the computer and they can push the button with their family's picture on it. And the system automatically opens up to an email to that child's family, and they can hold up their sculpture and say, mira, and show their sculpture and press send. And the family will, and the child can communicate with the family.
And
And
then
it's
think what
such a
the
great
oh,
reminder of how when it's hard to have uh, talking conversations with families that don't speak the same language.
well, and
You
just think then
communicate
when
with
they go
pictures.
home, and that's leading into my next point.
Oh,
When
okay.
they go home, their parents are going to have concrete knowledge of what went on that
Yes.
day, and then they can talk to their kids about that. I
Or
love that. So
so
if we don't
picture.
have that system, how can we do the same thing? Communicate to families what we did today so that you can have that conversation. Yeah. And
Well,
let's,
I know the answer to that.
yeah, good.
Because
Well,
because what how do I know the answer? You would not believe how these days almost every teacher will tell me they are using one of those text messaging programs to communicate with
yes,
families. They and
bright wheel and yeah,
Yeah, and
yeah.
remind.com,
Hmm.
Class Dojo. You
Yeah.
can, if you're not yet uh, uh, at a point with families where you can talk in the same language, pictures, and especially pictures of children, that's the best language to build that relationship and that trust with those families. Sending them home or having them ready so when the family comes to pick their child up, that you can say, open up your phone and show a little video of some wonderful thing that their child was doing during the day. Use those pictures and those videos to communicate. Just,
It shows that you care about their child and you care about you love them. So
yes,
I have been in some settings where teachers don't demonstrate that. They're kind of the opposite, and
yeah,
that breaks my heart because
yeah.
the
Oh, it's
first thing is if you can just be accepting and
and excited about the
excited,
child,
exactly.
right?
Because here's the flip side of it too. The English only children who've just lived in one region their whole entire lives, they're going to learn so much about the world. So
Yes.
it's not a deficit. It's an addition to your classroom that it just there's so well, we're going to talk about the different ways that it fosters learning. So we'll go to the next one. Yeah, when children learn at home in their home language, they don't need to relearn at school. Another thing I'll hear is, oh, those families need to speak English. Not until they have academic, yes, they can. But think about it. If we were learning a second language, it would take us as adults like up to 5 to 7 years to get academic English. We might now in a year be able to say, oh, go to school I'm thinking in French, right? And that's what it would sound like in French. Go to school, want bread, right? But that isn't rich language. That would be just our basics of if I went to France and we're just talking to my kids, They would be much better in France hearing from me in my rich academic English. So that's true for our families in our schools. So supporting them, just like we just talked about, what are we doing at school? And then at home, if they can help with that in their primary language, that's going to help the kids because they're going to have that rich foundation. Um, I met a woman at yeah, go for it,
No,
Karen.
no, you tell your
Yeah.
example and then take a breath for me to tell mine. Okay.
Oh, I was at, because then the other things say, oh, kids get confused. I was at a presentation and a woman came up to me, and I'm not going to remember the languages, the three languages, but she had grandchildren. She spoke, I think it was Tagalog. She was from the Philippines. Everybody spoke English, and the other grandparents, I'm making this up. I think I don't remember what the third language is. I think it was I I, I don't remember. Let's just say it was French. Those children knew, and they were little. There were three of them, and one of them was like 18 months. The oldest was 5. They knew who to speak what language to. Sometimes they did, it was mixed up, but they knew how to sort it. Think how lucky those children are. They're going to have three languages that they have academic proficiency in. And there's research, this presentation isn't about that, but people who are multilingual, there's less incidence of dementia, they have better critical thinking skills. I thought, God, how lucky. So here in our case, we can at least foster children who are bilingual by having their families help support and keep up that first language. What is your example, Karen?
Well, first of all, one of my favorite quotes from Lily Wong Fillmore, the great multilingual learner expert, said that we need families to talk to their children in their language of passion.
Oh, I
Their
love that.
language of passion, not
Yes.
the sort of new way
Yes.
you're trying to learn English, but the language
Exactly.
where all your emotions come out and your traditions and your feelings. I just love that. But uh one program that I worked with told me that what they have started doing is creating videos of classroom routines or classroom activities. So they post the videos on their website. So when families register and a family doesn't, and we have so many early childhood programs that have 8, 10, 12, 20 languages. So it's not just about
Yes.
translating, but can I show a video? So they told me, oh yeah, we take a video of, how we serve lunch, and we take a video of where the bathrooms are and what's in the bathroom, and a video of what we do on a fire drill, and we post the videos so that the families can explain it to the children in their home language. And they said that changed everything. Families and children entered school feeling like they knew what to expect. And how did the child learn about that? From their families. The families were the ones that had the information, that had the strength, that took the leadership role of preparing their child, rather than, what often happens when new families come and they don't speak the language, and the parents are intimidated and the children are intimidated. And in this case, those families march those children in like, don't worry, we got this under control. The
Well, and that
program
way you're
facilitated.
showing them how it does work. And that way you might not know what people don't know, but if you're showing them how it works, then they're going to learn about how things work.
Right.
I'm going to give an example here. I was at a school and there were some children from a country where they had like pit toilets, and it was just, they didn't have plumbing.
Yeah.
And I happened to have visited this country, and you didn't put toilet paper in the pit toilets because if you did, it would mess up the ecosystem.
Yeah.
And there was like a garbage can. Well, at this school, there were some children, and they were putting toilet paper on the ground. Well, some of the teachers were like, "What is wrong?" Well, a teacher, thank goodness, had been to this country, and she said, "Oh, the parent, the moms in that country probably had yelled at their children, 'Don't throw the toilet paper because you're going to ruin our toilets.'" Anyway, so the teacher knew that information. So they explained it to the kids, and the kids went, "Okay, now here I can put the toilet paper." You know what I'm trying to say?
Yeah.
So it's basic, and you might say, "Well, what does that have to do with learning?" It's everything. It's learning about our culture and how our schools work. So, Karen, I love that idea of sending the videos home with the bathrooms or the whatever, because
Right.
we might not know what people don't know.
Right.
But then you're showing what it looks like, and then the families can help the children deconstruct that.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't know. And the example I was just glad that the teacher knew that. And so that they could be kind to the children. Because can
Be
you imagine how
kind
you,
and open, right?
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, so there's real quick, here's a Venn diagram.
Oh, you're going to this.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm going to the next one. So when you learn something in your language, whatever language, you don't have to relearn the concepts. So I have this Venn diagram. So in your first language, if you learn body parts, characteristics of mammals, rotation of planets, photosynthesis, principles of democracy, you don't have to relearn that. So if I'm learning French, I already know what body parts are, head, shoulders, knees, and toes. I just need to learn those words in French. And then I built up to even sophisticated principles, like, what is democracy? And that links to what Karen's talking about, like the language of passion. That's where you really can explain it, not just on a surface level, but at that really deep, meaningful level. So if we have communicate with families, as we've already talked about, and they can help us teach those concepts when the children do have their academic language, they're not gonna be behind. They're gonna have these concepts well in hand. The good thing for us is early childhood. It's easier for us to do that because a lot of the things we do is hands-on. Anyway, so this is just a nice graphic to show people that why our first language is our power, and we build our second languages on that.
So
So,
I want to just
mhm.
take a stand in this
You're going
moment
to take a stand? Okay.
because, um, you know, uh, what you're describing is so important and so powerful. But for big kids school, for elementary school, for middle school, we have a curriculum and vocabulary and concepts that must be learned at certain times in certain ways. But in the early years, in preschool, in kindergarten, when teachers are allowed to be flexible and connect with what families are doing at home. So that's the other side of it. So to
Exactly.
adjust what you are planning to teach in your classroom so that instead of just coming in with your plan and then telling the families to do it at home, thinking about using that relationship. Well, if the families are very big in gardening, for example, adjust your science activity to focus on gardening because that's something that's naturally happening at
Exactly.
home, right?
Exactly.
And so my friends that work with the migrant seasonal Head Start in the East Coast found that problem. They were able to get so many resources in Spanish, but none of them depicted what it's like to be a migrant farm working family. And so they instead worked with the families to create their own classroom books and to bring materials in that the families used in the work in the fields and and then they adjusted how they used their curriculum so that those were the examples for math concepts, for stories, for vocabulary, for science. And so, in other words, you're not imposing learning on the families at home, but you're blending what are the strengths of the families that you talked about
Yep.
with the objectives of the classroom so they work together instead of trying to always change the other side of that partnership, right?
Exactly. Well, and a lot of times, like you were saying, Karen, in the upper grades, yes, you need to have this concrete knowledge about a certain subject. For us, it's more about do children know directional words like over and
Yes.
under? Do they need to know how to
Oops.
create patterns, compare and contrast? You can do that through the lens of what families know.
Yeah, I'm
So,
sorry.
no, no,
I
that's
was
okay. Go
checking the
ahead.
recording button while you were talking and I changed the
That's
slide.
okay.
But
It's all good.
anyway,
But
yes,
yeah, let's move on to the next one.
yes.
Yeah.
But I just really am in favor of what you were saying. And
Yeah.
um so
And so you
so
embedded this great video that people can go
yes,
watch.
because this is so important with the more recent research about connecting learning for children who are multilingual learners. It's about using things that are familiar to them, that capitalize on their strengths, as you were saying. And so we have this point here that families help reveal what a children's interests are, what their strengths are, so that you can include materials and activities in the classroom that are actually related to that child, not what you think they like, but what you find out that they actually like. And that really makes a big difference, according to the research, using things that are actually uh, familiar to children that
Hmm.
capitalize on their interests. They Something that's interesting to a child shows you that they probably have already played with it. They have vocabulary about that thing. They know concepts
Right.
about that thing, right? The child that runs into your classroom and immediately runs over to the block area is a child that you can think, wow, they must have experience with blocks. They know block words. If I want to help them start learning about counting, I'm not going to start with, plastic toys on a table. That child, I'm going to start with blocks because that's an area that's familiar. So
Right.
I realized that this picture is a great picture of the teacher and the mother conferring as the child enters the classroom. But the picture itself is from this video, which is called The Gift of Language. So I encourage everybody to take a picture of this link. And it's on YouTube. It's called The Gift of Language, and it's a video that really illustrates the value. Well, it illustrates the challenges when the teacher does not partner with the families, and then it shows how things change and improve when the teacher begins to try new things to partner with the families. It's really great to show with families, to show with, at a staff meeting, to show with your administrative team, to understand why these things are so important. So did you want to say more about this slide or move on?
No, I'm good. Yeah.
Okay.
So
Okay.
ongoing, this is a quote from, well, go ahead, Karen. This
No,
is
no.
from our colleague. Ongoing trust is built through consistent communication, flexibility, and honoring families' strengths and ensuring they feel valued, confident, and connected to the programs. So it's just this quote is just summing up kind of all the things we've talked about and really making sure that another thing I hear is, oh, the families don't care. They don't come to what our program we have. But did you explain it to them? Did you tell them why it's important? Did you think about their context and when they might be able to be there? Some people work in the evenings. They have hourly jobs. They can't just drop everything and leave because they, you know, they need that money to work. I have a super quick example from my own life. No, I'm not a dual language learner mom,
Mhm.
but we moved from California to Maryland, and my fifth grader, we didn't go to she moved in the middle of fifth grade year, and we didn't go to the crab festival. I got this flyer, and she was older, so I guess I don't know. Maybe they don't communicate as much, because the kids are older. Well, and we didn't go because it was really
Wait,
expensive. Yeah.
crab? So
Yes, we
the
were supposed
school
to go
is,
eat crab. Yes. And it
not
turned out,
everybody knows what that is.
no, I do now. Because now Maryland is, a lot of logos. We have blue crab in the Chesapeake Bay.
Yeah.
And what it turned out to be, how for a lot of fifth graders, there's like that capstone experience. Oh, when you're a fifth grader, you're going to get to do whatever before you go to middle school. Well, the crab festival was it, Karen, and we didn't go. And my daughter was already a dork because she didn't dress like everybody else. And anyway, and she's fine and we're fine. But I feel like that example probably plays out all the time when you put another layer where we, the educators, aren't explaining what things mean and the context and thinking about cost, thinking about
Yes.
logistics,
Yes.
um, and then also the lack of translation. And that's on us. We
Yeah.
need to, if people aren't coming, if they don't, respond to what we're doing, the onus is on us to figure out why is that not working for the families. And so this quote I love because it's building that trust. Because then somebody might come to you and say, hey, I see that this information about this event, but you know what? That's not going to work for us because and then you'd honor what they say and then you'd make accommodations where you are able to do that. So
So
um,
yes, and
yeah.
and I'm really feeling for what it's like for a fifth grade newcomer, even though
Yeah.
she speaks the language,
And
to
she's from
have
the same
been
country, but
clueless
yeah,
about this big event that was really part of that community. And
exactly.
I think, yes, explaining, but also you're highlighting how important it is to interact with each family. Because in that
Exactly.
case, it wasn't that you didn't understand the words in the flyer. It was that you needed somebody who knew you and could take your perspective and why, it might go over your head, right? Because you weren't from there. But that's about that personal relationship with individual
Exactly.
families. So what we're
Exactly.
finding schools doing now a lot more often is that instead of planning uh, activity, like so often you ask teachers, what is their parent engagement program? And they'll give you a list of activities. But not all families participate in all the activities. So some programs are flipping that planning now to starting with a list of families and then indicating for each family what language do they want to be communicated with, what
Very nice.
modes. Some don't respond to text messages, some want a phone call, some really need you to talk to them. Some, may appear to speak one language, but they're really more comfortable in another language. And so instead of making a list of activities and hope they show up, start with the list of families. So this is what I'm hearing from programs that are doing this, that
Yep.
we know each family. So we have a plan for family A because they can't come to the program. So we plan, to get together with them in a different way. Or we know this family really, wasn't responding well to our notices. So we asked another family member that spoke the same language to be their sort of ambassador and connect with them and give them those clues. So, somebody that from if somebody from your daughter's class, a family member could have been assigned, oh, the Christenson family just moved in. Can you, reach out to them and help them
Exactly.
know like some of the things we do and our school
Exactly.
traditions and something. You know what my one friend calls that? The unwritten curriculum.
Yes.
Like the
Yes.
the, the sort of the
I've heard it
cultural
called
thing.
hidden curriculum too. Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
Yeah. Hmm.
So so
Yeah.
so so starting with a list of the families and which ones need that, kind of unwritten curriculum, which ones need a different way of interacting, which ones can come. So you want activities that will bring them in and then making those adaptations instead
And
of just
if you
my
start building
agenda
that.
and put it on the families. I start with the family.
Exactly. And if you just think about it, if you are lucky enough to be in one place over time, or even if you are there and then you leave, you're building that culture in your school, in your space, in your
Yes.
setting, so that years down the road, that the person who was helped will become the helper of another
Yes.
family.
That's
And you're just
happened. Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
that's what I heard from those schools that are doing that.
But
Yes,
then you've got to be the conduit to get that started,
get it
that
started.
we don't just come, we're not scared to talk to these people. It's a welcoming place. They care
Right,
about what we think about. They love my child.
right.
It starts with us to get that kind of community
Yes, to be
started.
prepared for that.
Yep.
And so Chela included that in
Hmm.
some of. So this is another one of her quotes that you were really connecting with.
Absolutely. I think that's what's this so nice about our presentation. We're all coming from these different perspectives,
Right,
but there's a thread right through it from our different areas of expertise. And she's, the person in the field, and look what she's saying about it. Learn from families, not about them. Ask families about, or it's just kind of summing up all the points we've just made, Karen, right?
yeah, yeah,
Ask families about their cultural norms, expectations, educational experiences. Cultural norms, that's making me think about some cultures, it's considered very disrespectful to look somebody in the eye when they're disciplining you. And in some cultures in the US, it's like, look at me. And you are supposed to make that contact if
right.
you're being talked to, or not even necessarily disciplined, but you're being redirected even in a very kind way. You're supposed to make eye contact. That could be the most disrespectful thing to do in some cultures. So families can help you with that. Actually, my dad was a teacher, and he was in high school. And back to school night, there was a bunch of parents out in the hallway, and they weren't coming in. Well, it turned out, I'm not going to say where it was because I'm not going to remember for sure. But where they were from, teachers were considered, these high holy people, and you would never go in their classroom unless the teacher came to the door and invited them in. So
Wow.
those are two small examples, but why are the children acting the way they are? It could be because that is the cultural norm in their culture. They are being as respectful as they can.
Yeah.
And then recognize that each family is unique, even within the same a country or cultural group. I mentioned, urban, rural, all that.
Mhm.
You can make some generalizations, but don't expect them all to be 100% true in exactly the same way. And avoid assumptions. Let families guide you about what matters to them.
Yeah.
I just love this quote from her.
I know. And I think that one of the important things to remember is that in Head Start, the component that's for early Head Start for birth to 3, the focus is not about teaching the children. The focus is on strengthening the family. The family is the child's
Yes,
first teacher. So this
yes,
whole program of early Head Start,
yes.
the top priority is how are we building the family? And
Hmm.
how do we serve what the family needs, not how do we impose from the top down. But I think one of the stories that I heard from one of the programs was the one time they had a lot of Spanish speaking families, so they decided to have like a Hispanic cultural day,
Hmm.
and they brought in a food truck that made tacos, and everybody thought it was so great. And but there was one of the Spanish speaking families that kind of left early and didn't eat anything. And the teachers didn't know why. And they had to ask the family after they were from Colombia. That's like, just because we speak Spanish doesn't mean
Doesn't mean
we
we
eat
eat tacos,
tacos.
yeah.
And that was an assumption. So
Right.
I remember when the teacher told me this, and she said, "Oh, we all looked at each other and we said we should have asked before the event, not after." So we do have
Exactly.
to sort of give each other a break and like, oh, we try the best we can, but it
And we
is,
learn and we move
yeah,
on and do better next time, right?
yeah,
So, and once again, this is echoing what we've already talked about. Collaborative partnering and empowering families as equal partners.
yeah,
Like I mentioned in my dad's example, in some cultures, um, you don't talk to the teacher. I mean, you just listen to the teacher. What do I know? I don't know anything. The teacher knows everything. And so
right.
we need to help empower families. You are the first teacher of your child, just as you just said, Karen. And co-create goals rather than telling families what they should do.
Yeah.
This just kind of summarizing what we've already talked about, and offer flexible meeting times to reduce the barriers that we create, right? So, and now with the internet, it's not the most optimal, but if that'd be better than nothing,
Yes.
a FaceTime call or whatever, that'd be better than nothing. In person's better, but maybe if that's all everybody can work out, then, better than nothing.
Yeah, well, I have family that lives in another country,
Hmm.
and I have grandchildren that live over there. And we do a lot with screen time. Like when you have to use screens to build relationships,
Yep.
and you really focus on the relationship aspect of it, it is sometimes necessary and then can be effective. But I also like what she said of offering, because this is another quote from Chela and what she does with her program, offer flexible meeting times and locations. So I have heard well, first of all, let me say, part of the Head Start of every Head Start program is to do home visits before
Hmm.
the child enters the program. Get to know the family, let the family get to know you, be individually as people before all the hullabaloo of entering the classroom and all that. And some schools do that, and I always think it's interesting. You can talk to one public school in United States that will say, "Oh, we cannot possibly do home visits," and then the next town over, "Oh, we always do home visits," right?
When I
So
was a kindergarten teacher, we didn't do it before the school year, but during the school year, we made a home visit to every kid, and my class
wow,
size was 30.
wow,
But oh
yeah.
my
See, that's a
gosh,
little different, but that's a
but
lot.
what we
But
learned from those visits, oh
mhm.
my goodness. You stepped into the house and everything kind of clicked in place. So,
All of that, but
yeah,
also
so
to be
important.
open. And this is why she's saying
Yep,
flexible locations. Not
yep.
every family is comfortable having the teacher come in their house.
That is very
But we
true.
don't let that stop us. We say, well, let's meet, like at the
At the
local
library.
McDonald's, or
Yeah,
I'll stop by
yeah.
the laundromat, when you're doing your
Yep.
laundry, because when you go that little extra effort as a teacher to make that connection, the things that fall in place make your job easier after that.
It's
And
absolutely
that is,
true.
really an important lesson to learn. So we just took this moment, as we're sort of pulling together the things that Leanne does in her work as a college professor, the things that I do in my work as a consultant with programs, and the things that Shayla does every day in contact with the families, that we have all in different ways talked about the importance of starting out in a welcoming way, that families, when they enter the program, should see images that look like them. They should have the access on your website, on as they enter the front door, the person that greets them at the desk when they come to enroll should be able to uh, connect with their language, support their language, feel, like newcomers enter the program feeling that sense of belonging and connectedness, right? So I work with one urban district in New Jersey where more than half the families speak Spanish, but at the school office where you go to enroll, there was not one sign or handout or form in Spanish when they walked in the door. But, a few miles away in New York City, every public school building has signs in multiple languages with the phone number of who to call if you have questions about your child's education. And how hard is that? So getting started, we always say first impressions are lasting impressions.
Absolutely.
Can you take a step back and look at what does a new family see when they walk up to our building, when they look on our website, when they come in? Um, and um, Oh, I think this is going back to what you said earlier, but it's a quote from
Exactly.
Chayla.
Yeah. That building partnerships allow early childhood programs to help families solve problems. There's a
Yeah,
lot of problems. Well, just raising children. No matter, being a parent today is a complex, always has been a complex act, but I think it's even more complex today. So
yeah,
helping families, so if you're moving into a new context, you're going to need a little more support, at least to be really nice, right?
yeah.
So we need to help families solve problems and clearly explain customs and routines. We've talked about that throughout.
Oh,
That's just spiraled through our whole presentation and
right.
connect to the linguistic enclaves for your area of support. And yeah, this is Shayla's quote, but I had prepared my piece before that. So I just love that we're validating one another.
Yes, it all comes together, right? And this is a great example of connecting with the family because one time I was doing a workshop and a teacher said, "Oh, I send an email home to all my families and ask them to take a picture of their child's meal and send the picture
What a
by
great
email." And
idea.
then I printed them all out and made them into a classroom book. And I thought that was a great idea because instead of like a book you order from a catalog, this
I
was the
love it.
real, what my real food looks like. And I
Right.
always show this picture because this is actually my little grandson and his parents. And you can see from his face that he has feelings about that plate of pancakes. And that means he has knowledge about it. He has words to talk about it. Like, how you said, Leanne, what they learn at home doesn't have to be relearned. If I know that if his family sent me this picture and I know that he knows about the foods, the colors, the tastes that are on that plate, I can engage him in so much conversation and help him make
Absolutely.
connections about that plate between his home language
Absolutely.
and English, right? Because these
Exactly.
are things that he knows about and familiar, and you can see that from his face. But don't you know another teacher in that workshop said, "Hey, why don't you print that out, cut out just the plate, and then laminate it with plastic and use
And
that
put it in the kitchen
as
area.
in the
Yeah.
kitchen area, in the dramatic play
Awesome.
area, instead of that, like the plastic, sushi that we order from the catalogs, things that are really make connections. But how did you get them? You got them because you
From
asked
the
the parents.
families.
And then
Exactly.
when the parents visit the classroom, what are they seeing?
They see
The things they have
themselves.
at home, their strengths, their knowledge, their contributions are actually classroom learning materials that help their child And you better believe they help their child's peers as well, because everybody is learning what their different friends have in their meals and the colors and how they make them and whatever they want to talk about. So that's my little example. We also talk so much in uh, multilingual education about using visuals, visuals, visuals. And how many classrooms have I been in where the teacher is using a visual that makes no sense to the child? Like it made sense to the teacher, but really, when we choose visuals, we've got to stop saying that. Use visuals because it doesn't work unless the child knows what the visual means. If it means something like a picture of snow, doesn't mean anything to a child who has never touched snow. There's no point in showing a picture. It could be soap suds for all they know, right?
Exactly. And then a
So
better
think,
step, and okay, this would be another presentation, is the appropriate use of screens in classrooms.
yes, there you go,
But
there you go.
but an appropriate use of screens might be showing quick video clips where you, the teacher, describe it. Don't just show it, but go,
Right.
oh, this is, I grew up in California as a kid and we read about snow all the time, and I'm like, what's snow?
Yeah,
Anyway, but that you have a good example there, Karen.
yeah,
Not just a picture of snow, but at least the video would, and if you explain it as you're going,
yeah.
it,
But
it would it would
no,
give more meaning than just a flat picture with
I
nothing.
agree video,
Yeah,
but not
yeah.
explaining, because then teachers always say that to me. We're like, explain it. And I said, well, what about the child doesn't understand
That
your
that
words?
doesn't, I know.
So
I
start
know.
with something they do know, and how you're going to find out
Well, then
what
a
kind of
better
visuals will help, because you are learning from the family. What do they do at home? Like, look at this child baking with their grandparent.
And then I'm going to cut to, how about we make dough in class? Because what am I going to learn if I don't understand the language of the classroom? But what am I going to learn if, okay, I could see a picture of somebody making dough, I could watch a video, but what about if we all made Play-Doh one day
There you
and
go.
we rolled it out?
Yeah,
And you say, oh, we're rolling it out with the rolling pin. How does it feel? What are you going to learn from that versus visual,
just a
visual, visual?
picture.
Exactly.
And you know what, too? Those are the things that children talk about when they go home,
Yep,
you know?
absolutely.
Because the things they do are so much more meaningful. So when we connect with the families and bring those things, I find out that some of the families do a lot of baking with the children. So I'm going to bring in those kind of baking and making and Play-Doh making into my classroom work. And when you use things that are familiar to children, that helps them make connections to the content and gives them more to talk about. So if you use, like, those plastic bears, and the children who are multilingual learners, they don't know what they are, don't know what they're made of, don't know what they're for, they have nothing to talk about. You're trying to teach sorting, but all they do is put them in different piles, and there is no other meaning gained from that. But if you have them sort socks, they know what socks are, they know what they're for, they have their favorite socks. They know not to put the daddy socks with the baby socks. And then if they sort socks in school, when they go home and they see the laundry basket, imagine the conversations that they will have that helps bridge that partnership with the families, because you are using things in the classroom that the children will also see at home. And so,
And
sorry,
think of the
plastic bears.
vocabulary and think of the vocabulary development with the
Yeah,
sock example. You could have each family send in a pair of socks. You could learn colors, you could learn textures, because
yeah,
you're actually doing, you're not just
doing
talking or showing a picture. Yeah,
100%.
yeah.
So this is, and I see we're about to run out of time. So I'm like really keeping my eye on it here. But this is a picture one of my friends, who's a preschool director, sent in, that she has family members come in and help write the classroom labels in the different languages. So it doesn't look them up online, because when the families come in and they are putting their hands on things that happen in the classroom, they are more invested. They feel like they are part of that teaching partnership, and they can see evidence. I, as a parent, made that thing that's in that classroom.
Karen, you know what just popped in my head? Wouldn't it be cool, because we have technology now, if you could also have them record what it sounds like? Because even if you had the word in that language,
Right.
I might not know how to pronounce it to the
Yes.
extent that the child's like, "What did you say?" Right? But if you
Yes.
had a native speaker pronounce that, And
Yeah.
could somehow, I don't know how you do that with the labels,
I
but you know
have
what? I
heard
bet our
families
audience knows.
that, yes, they do. I have heard teachers tell me they have recordings, and for classrooms where the children are able to use devices like tablets or whatever,
Hmm.
that
Hmm.
have made like a QR code that the child can hold their device up and it opens up to the recording. But I don't know how to
Very
do that.
cool.
So
Very
I hope
cool.
there's somebody watching this video that's
And they can
shouting at the
email us.
screen saying, "You should know this, Karen and Leanne. We know how to do it."
Then please email us because we want to know.
We do want to
Yeah.
know. So this is my example
There's
of
there's
socks.
the sock,
And oh,
Shirley.
this is an example. Another one of my friends who's a preschool teacher has the family send in restaurant menus and supplies from the restaurants in their neighborhood where the children go. So in their dramatic play area, it's not from a catalog. It's the things that the family say, yes, this is a restaurant. You can't just say, oh, well, I have Korean families. I'll go to a Korean restaurant. I, Karen Nemeth, do not know what is the most authentic Korean restaurant. I want the families to send the ones that are familiar to their children. And then look, this whole dramatic play area was set up with the things that families sent in. So we say, we really want to see real items that are relevant and connected to the child's culture. How are you going to get that? You're going to get that from the families. And and through your, relationship with the families, not that they have to buy things and contribute things, but they can tell you what things are familiar and what things they use. And you might go get some of them from a local flea market or festival. Oh my goodness, when I lived in New Brunswick, New Jersey, my last name is Hungarian. And New Brunswick, New Jersey just happens to have the biggest Hungarian cultural festival in the East Coast. And it was so fun to learn, so it's not always just asking the families to send things and buy things and bring things, but also what you can get from their community. Also, like you were saying earlier, in from communities of faith that might contribute things to your school, and keep that circle of communication with the community and the families and the child.
Absolutely.
So that oh,
Thank you.
yes, we've gotten to the end of our PowerPoint, because we knew we had to sort of keep some structure here. We would like to be in a room with you all talking stories all day. We know you have wonderful stories of your own, so we hope that you are recording some of them and sharing them with your colleagues at work and with your families, and sharing them with NABE. And these are our email addresses: Karen at languagecastle.com. And for Leanne, it is L Christenson at towson.edu. That you can email us with your questions and your suggestions, and we would love to hear from you. So, would you like to say a goodbye message, Leanne?
Thank you for spending time with us. And it was fun doing this recording, but we miss being with people because our our presentations are stronger when we get examples from our audiences. It's collaborative and we learn from you. So anyway, good luck and thank you for what you do in service to young children. We appreciate that.
Yes, we all thank you, and enjoy the conference. And now I'm going to stop the recording. Wait.